Hi guys, my name is Sam and I'm here with Her Campus BU, and this is definitely an introduction I should have made in my last video on here, so welcome! Now you all know my name. Today's video I decided to do a little kind of chill study with me motivational type video to get everyone kind of into the spirit of school as we enter the home stretch of the spring semester, which has been my first semester here at BU because I am in our College of General Studies program, which basically entails having a gap semester during the fall and then starting in the spring. So I would say my first semester of school has been pretty alright, all things considered, and I thought that I would just hopefully be able to relay some knowledge onto you guys about what I do in terms of studying and homework and just getting everything done on time and staying motivated, even though Zoom fatigue has definitely been real despite going to as many in-person classes as I possibly have been able to. So insert a cheesy transition and let's get started. Also, not to flex, I know this is probably not a huge thing now that I'm in college, but I was a valedictorian of my high school class, so hopefully some of this information bears some good news for some of you, and it's not just me who uses this stuff to keep motivated and to help study, because evidently it worked out pretty well for me. So just putting it out there though. I know it's kind of irrelevant now, but you know. So here is a little list of all of the classes that I have. I am taking 2 CGS classes this semester, which are social science and rhetoric, and they have been pretty reading intensive, at least my social science class has been, but I've been learning a lot and I really enjoying my professors, so that's a plus. My philosophy class I am really enjoying as well. It's reasoning and argumentation with Dr. Anderson, and he is just a joy. What a wonderful man, really is passionate about what he's talking about, and that really kind of helps to get me motivated. So I guess that's not like an official tip, but I would definitely say to check rate my professor and look at the professors and the reviews that they have before you choose your classes at all, because an engaging professor will help you get engaged in a subject 9 times out of 10. And then I have my major authors English class, which I actually was able to transfer into, and I am loving every minute of it. I am going to be a prospective English and philosophy major, so that's why I have those 2 electives right now. And I've been loving all the books that we've been reading. Right now we are reading the Aeneid, almost finishing up, and then we move on to Dante. So exciting things to come for me at least. So right now I do only have 4 classes, and that's what a typical schedule at BU will look like, about a 4-class course load, and it's 17 credits. My social science is 5 credits and all the rest of my classes are 4 right now. So it's not too intense in terms of workload, but there are definitely weeks where I sometimes feel like I'm in way over my head and I'm up till 2 or 3 in the morning consistently, and it's not a good scene, but we get it done so that the next week we can go to sleep at 9 p.m. every single night. Now we get into more of the motivational and study tips that I promised, and if you see me looking off to the side, it's because I have everything written down on my handy dandy iPad right here. So without further ado, we'll start with my first tip, which is just staying organized and keeping a rather updated list of all of your upcoming assignments at all times. So what I use, and I kind of went through this in my last video as well, I use this app called Notion, and I basically just wrote down all of my classes, all of my reading assignments, and all of my other assignments that I have. Right now I have pulled up literally my plans for this video right now. So if we go to my class schedule, I just have all of my classes listed here. If I go to any additional to-dos, this is kind of where I map out like long-term projects and essays, and I just have them marked by no status, which means I haven't started yet, in progress, completed, and then past due, just to kind of like keep track of all the assignments that I have done. And then I have all of my classes listed in my readings and additional assignments. Additional assignments basically just entails like any presentations, projects, essays, and then my readings are of course readings, as you could imagine. I also have down here all of my stuff that I've been doing for Her Campus, which has basically just been these last 2 videos that I've made. Keeping everything organized and writing it down has just been really helpful for me to know exactly what's on the syllabus. I keep little tally and check marks next to everything so that I know exactly when I've completed it. I just recently checked off some of my social science readings that are due on Wednesday, and just looking at this count of 74 go down to this last little batch of readings has been so gratifying, let me just tell you. I would definitely recommend keeping a list of everything that you have due, at least within a week or two, on you at all times, so that you know exactly what's due and exactly what you have to do for each thing that is due. My next piece of advice is a little bit painstaking, and sometimes you just genuinely don't have the time for it, but it's something that has been really helpful to me, especially as I've kind of gotten into the groove of the semester and learned exactly what my kind of place is and exactly how I can structure my weeks. So that is to write and rewrite notes so that you can retain the information better. Now, as I'm taking mostly qualitative reasoning and humanities-based classes, I don't really need to do this as much, just because I don't need to memorize a whole lot of information like I would for maybe a STEM-based course or like a business class where there's a lot of multiple choice intensive kind of tests and quizzes where I might have to look through a study guide and remember some terms so that I can answer questions correctly. Everything that I've had to do has been writing an essay based, and pretty much everything that I will be doing for the rest of the semester is writing an essay based. So I don't really have much of a use for writing and rewriting my notes at the moment, but this is a tip that was really helpful for me in high school because I genuinely hated all of my science classes, and I'm so sorry for any of you who enjoy science, but I hated science with a burning passion because I knew right from the get-go that it was not something that I wanted to do with my life. So this being said, a lot of the things that we genuinely don't have interest in are sometimes what we end up falling off a bit in terms of grades or just in terms of how much effort we put toward it. So something that ended up helping me was just making my notes look nice and pretty and just rewriting everything. I kept one notebook that had every single class in it, where I would just kind of like freehand jot down notes really quickly during class, and then when I came home I would separate them into my individual class notebooks and then be able to better rewrite and organize my thoughts. And it became really easy come time to like study for any tests or quizzes, and I would kind of block out time about like 3 to 5 days in advance to just look over all those notes, and it was so much easier to retain and recall all that information since I had written it down, given it time to process, and then rewritten it, and in that process given it the chance to kind of settle in more, and just allowed me to be a much better student, I think, overall. My next tip kind of has a lot to do with my first tip on keeping an organized list of all of your assignments at all times, and that is to keep attuned to which assignments would be considered priorities for about a week or two in advance again, whether it's by due date, whether it's by time you need to complete it, or whether it's by the time that you think you're going to be able to set aside to do a certain amount of work. I would definitely keep track of what works best for you in terms of when things are due and how long you think an assignment's going to take. For instance, I have an essay that's not due until the end of the semester, so I know that I at least have a little bit of flex time for that right now, but we are kind of getting into the process of looking at like what kind of sources we're intending to use and what our topics are going to be. So I know that I can kind of spread out this process a lot more, knowing that it's due not until much later, even though it is more of a high caliber assignment. So knowing that really helps me kind of stretch out my assignments and plan things accordingly. Where some of my readings that I know might be due in 2 or so days, I'll just kind of bang it out right then and there as quickly as possible. And assignments like these where I know that I'll be able to kind of just sit down, focus, run through the entire thing are assignments that I can generally plan for according to my schedule. So today is Monday, April 5th. So I only have 2 classes and I'm done by noon, so I know that I'll be able to kind of plan for my week and get a lot of those sit down, just get it done assignments done, so that I have more time during my more busier days to get in kind of those assignments that might take a little longer and then I'm gonna have to section out in order to complete them. So if that made any sense whatsoever, basically just keep track of your assignments by the date they're due, how long you think it's going to take to complete them, and when exactly you think you're going to have time to complete them, so that you can kind of structure a little schedule in your head based on what classes you have or what other kind of social activities you have going on, and then go from there so that you can complete all your assignments in a timely and efficient manner. Cannot believe that I just said that all in one breath. Okay. This next tip has been something that I didn't used to follow all the time because I used to like think that I was like so great at multitasking and being able to like separate my brain capacity somehow, but try not to listen to music that has any words that you can easily follow along with. I used to do this all the time when I was like reading and stuff for class. I would just put on like one of my favorite bands and just like read, and at the time I wasn't realizing how much it was actually distracting me from my readings because I pretended that I could differentiate between what the singer was saying in the lyrics and what I was reading, but sometimes it just wasn't the case at all. So I would recommend kind of putting on some like classical tunes. There is a really good playlist on Spotify called Classical Music for Metalheads, and it's kind of just this really like intensive classical music feel that makes me like really jazzed to do my work for some reason. Or just like, you know, the lo-fi chill hop girl on YouTube is always always a go-to, because I feel like music, for me at least, is more of a kind of background noise to kind of just settle and focus yourself in on what you're doing, rather than being focused on music and then being focused on your work and trying to mesh them together, because that hardly ever works. I would definitely recommend listening to words without music. Listening to music without words, just so that you can really hone in and focus on what you're doing, and it also provides more of a background noise so that you might not be more attuned to your surroundings and can kind of just focus in on the work that you have to do. My next tip concerns taking breaks when you're studying, which I know can sometimes end up turning into like a half-hour long, let me see how long I can scroll through social media session. And I might have made a reference to TikTok here, but I am actually one of the few people who don't have TikTok, because I know that if I downloaded it, I would lose all of my resolve and just scroll through my For You page for hours on end, which, you know, might be something to recommend, you know, just kind of if you have to do a lot of things, just like delete it for a little bit. You can get it back as a reward. But I would say to plan out short, around 5-minute breaks when you're studying, about every 20 to 30 minutes, because sometimes your brain just can't handle studying for hours upon hours on end. I know that when I'm doing certain readings, some of them can be like 30-page long, packed, dense readings that I have to get done like in one night, because sometimes I'll admit I'm not the best at planning out my assignments and my social life. But when you attack this reading kind of from a whole holistic point and you're like, oh my gosh, 30 pages, what am I gonna do? It's a lot easier and more manageable when you sit down and you say, okay, I'll read 10 pages, then I'll take a little 5 to 10 minute break and I'll respond to some text messages or emails, or I'll just kind of like mindlessly scroll through social media, give my brain a little break, maybe close my eyes, just listen to some music, hum along, and then re-hone back into what you're doing, because a lot of the time your brain kind of just needs that time to just cool it, take a little break, let's see what we can do in this time, and then move forward from there. I find that this happens a lot when I'm kind of reaching that little like burnout phase where I've been going for so long. I've had 2 papers due this past week, and I've had over 100 pages of reading to do for 2 separate classes, and it's just been a lot of stress on my system. So when I feel like I'm reaching kind of like that stage of like maybe I might be burning out a little bit, I'll kind of step back, take a little break, look around the room, sing a little song, do a little dance, get back into what I'm doing, and then it really helps kind of remove me from the edge, so that once I reach the weekend or whenever I can take my next longer break from doing schoolwork in general, then I'll feel more refreshed after coming back from it and not feel like, oh my gosh, I just crashed and now I have to rebuild myself. And I think that this segues into my last point, which is to know your limits and exactly how long you can study and do homework for. I know that sometimes, at least for me, because I'm a little nerd girl who actually enjoys school, yes, and taking notes and making them look pretty, because what else am I supposed to do with my time? My entire Instagram Explore page is all full of like aesthetic note-taking, study with me, and my whole YouTube homepage is marathon 4-hour study with me, which is basically just someone setting up a camera, sitting down, and just grinding through whatever it is that they're doing, which is kind of intimidating, but honestly kind of reassuring for me. But knowing your limits and exactly how long you can go for, despite knowing that there are some people in the world that can study for 12 hours in one session, is so important, because no matter how much you want to be able to just sit down and grind things out, sit through the whole day and just go for it, sometimes you physically just can't do that. And I think that recognizing that in yourself and knowing when you need to take breaks, and knowing that, you know what, maybe it's okay if I watch a little bit of my favorite TV show right now instead of just keep on going, especially since I've been going since 11 p.m. and it's now 2 o'clock in the morning, is kind of just something that you need to recognize in yourself. Or if it's 2 in the morning, then maybe you should just go to sleep, because honestly, prioritizing your own health at the end of the day is way more important than any schoolwork that you could ever do. It basically all boils down to just finding a routine that works the best for you, even if it's just kind of chipping away at an assignment for 15 minutes every day, such as the essay that I was talking about earlier, about how we're kind of just in the preliminary stages of it right now, and just maybe taking 15 minutes to read through a source, or taking 15 minutes to do 2 or 3 math problems that you know aren't due for another 5 days or so. It's all about finding what works for you and getting into your own groove. So even though this has been my personal motivational study tips, it's not with the intention of you following them verbatim. It's me sharing exactly what works for me, and maybe it's something new that you might want to try. And if it doesn't work out, it's knowing that it doesn't work for you, and then knowing that you have to stop doing that and find your own way of doing things. So I hope that some of these tips have been at least a little bit helpful in terms of finding your motivation to study, whether it be from carefully selecting professors about 3 or 4 months before the semester even begins, because honestly, when does school ever end, even if you're on summer break? Or just taking time for yourself and making your notes look pretty or something like that. That's something that personally motivates me. I like when things look nice. It makes me want to do it more. So It works for me, and I like it that way. And sometimes it boils down to just being something as simple as that. If you like how it looks and you don't mind doing it, then sometimes you just gotta go for it. Leave it to me to accidentally make this a whole life lesson instead of just giving you tips on how you can maybe become a little bit of a better student. Hopefully this was at least worthwhile to some of you, and I wish everyone the best of luck as this semester kind of wraps up and then we enter finals. My first final season. I'm gonna pretend I'm not as scared as I actually am.